Good afternoon, welcome to another APUSH video with Mr. Pate. We're in review mode for the AP exam. Today we're looking at Gilded Age problems and progressive era reforms that come to deal with those. So here we go. We have three areas we're going to look at if you were to organize this as an essay: political, economic, and social, frequently used labels and categories. So here we go. Under political, we have political machines. Political machines, if you don't remember, were organizations run at the local and state level that we lived in at this time in a pre-primary era. They would choose the nominee basically for the citizens. They would oversee at the local level the voting process. There was no secret ballot yet, and then there was just a ton of corruption that emerged as a result of this. So we have this as a big problem. Political machines, they're corrupt, they're grafting off millions and millions of dollars all over the place. Citizens aren't really getting their choices from anything from U.S. senators all the way down to like city councilmen or aldermen. All right, so things that change this. The arrival of the secret ballot in the United States is going to be huge because now someone can't be watching over you who works for the political machine, making sure you're voting the right way. City manager. This is called the Galveston Plan. It kind of spreads from there. The idea that the city would hire someone based on their qualifications who would do a lot of the actual managing of what the city was doing, as opposed to a political figure being the mayor. Many cities have these city managers today even. Direct election of senators, which is going to be the 17th Amendment. The direct election of senators is going to be a huge one in that it is going to, for the first time, allow citizens to choose their senators, as opposed to this being someone chosen by the state legislature. And along with that, the direct primary, where citizens would get to choose their nominee for every position for their party and then vote in a general election, as opposed to the machines choosing the Republican and the Democrat, and then citizens choosing between two machine-controlled, likely to be corrupt politicians. So political machines are going to be diminished through these laws in a lot of ways, which is a very good thing. Citizens' vote had been marginalized during this era. You have things that emerged from Robert La Follette, the initiative, which is like a ballot measure where citizens can directly propose and then vote on and pass state laws. Recall, where they can get rid of corrupt or bad politicians, poor performing politicians. And referendum. Referendum is where the legislature would sometimes refer things to the voters to be able to vote on. Between all of these 7 political reforms, really you see that citizens have many more ways and avenues to actually influence the voting process, the political process, to get rid of corrupt people and have choices that aren't chosen for them by machines in it to just make money and have power. Our second category is economic. Economically, the trusts were a huge problem. The trusts wiped out competition, which is bad for consumers. They weren't necessarily great for their workers. They had a huge influence on politics as well. So this is a very negative thing in a lot of ways. Presidential trust busting. So you're going to see Theodore Roosevelt is going to be the first president willing to kind of tackle this a little bit. And he is going to say there are good trusts and bad trusts. And basically he said trusts that aren't harming the public, then those trusts, that's fine. They're doing a good service. You also have Taft is going to come in and he's going to say basically the same thing, but he's actually going to trust bust more than TR did. And then we get Wilson, and Wilson goes up against Taft in 1912, and TR, who's coming back with his new nationalism. And TR and Wilson now both agree basically all trusts need to be broken up because they're just hurting the American citizen too much. They're bad for workers, bad for competition, bad for other businesses, bad for consumers. So presidential trust busting is going to be a huge thing, and it's going to happen with the tools of the Federal Trade Commission and the Clayton Antitrust Act, which give some teeth and tools to the presidents and the executive branch to use to get rid of these trusts, and trusts are basically going to get wiped out. After this, competition is going to be restored, which is a very good thing. Other things, we need protection for workers and consumers. And you're going to see that consumers get some protections through the Meat Inspection Act and the Pure Food and Drug Act, both of which are kind of inspired by Upton Sinclair and The Jungle, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Child labor and workplace safety are two other areas that progressives were concerned with. There were 2 million children working in the United States by 1910. They were between the ages of 10 and 15. That is crazy. And sometimes they're working well over 8 hours a day. They were subject to all kinds of health hazards, and working such long hours, it became very dangerous for them. And progressives said, let's get rid of child labor, and that's going to be a huge impact when they do that. They'll also restrict, eventually, state by state, women's work hours that they work. The other thing going along with this is workplace safety. The Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, where a bunch of women basically are burned to death in this horrific fire and are jumping out windows just to not be burned to death and dying. They had locked the doors. So not only was it an unsafe building, but they locked the workers in so they wouldn't just ditch in the middle of a shift. So this is going to so outrage the public that they will not be able to lock doors. That's why you have emergency exits that have to be able to be opened. And other safety workplace things start to be implemented after Triangle Shirtwaist Fire occurrence. So that's economic, and you see things that are good for consumers, good for workers, and good in competition in general. Social is our last area. There had not been a vote for women. Women have been agitating for this for a long time, going back to Abigail Adams, going back to the Seneca Falls Declaration in 1948. You get the 19th Amendment passed. Now, it's notable that many states, particularly Western states, women had the vote state by state years before the 19th Amendment was ratified in 1920, but nonetheless, it is going to be a significant, notable accomplishment that it is a constitutional amendment for every state. The second thing is alcohol-related problems. Temperance movements have been going on since early reform, down to the WCTU, Women's Christian Temperance Union, in the 1870s, 80s, and 90s. And then women, they'd gotten the right to vote, very soon before this, the 18th Amendment, which is prohibition, passed. And that was, again, kind of a look at this is a way to better society. You had these echoes from the mugwumps and limited other political reformers, things like the civil service reform with the Pendleton Act that had happened in the 1880s during the Gilded Age. But in general, most reform, this is a new generation of people who grow up and they're college educated, they're middle class people, and they're fed up with these corruptions and problems in society. And you're talking the 16th Amendment with the income tax. You're talking about the 17th Amendment with direct election of senators, the 18th Amendment with prohibition, the 19th Amendment with women's right to vote. A period of significant reform and change in these three areas. That's all I have for today. Stay classy.